Hello, welcome back. I'm Statman David. Today we're going to be taking a look at my 2021 Premier League predictions. Taking a look at the champions, the top four, relegation, the top scorer, and all the rest of the good stuff. Guys, make sure to subscribe if you are new to the Statman Dave YouTube channel. Smash that like button, and it's time. Let's get this party started. First up, we've got to talk about relegation, but before we do that, get your predictions in the comments below. I want your full predictions. The first manager to be sacked, who's going to win the Golden Boot, all of that good stuff. But for me, in 20th place, I am going from West Brom. Despite finishing second in the Championship, I think that's where they belong. There's a real lack of Premier League quality for Bilic to choose from. And when you're relying on the likes of Hal, Robson-Kanu and Charlie Austin to score, you're going to struggle to stay in the top flight. One shining light, however, will be Brazilian, Portuguese, playmaker extraordinaire, Matheus Pereira. I think he'll be this season's Emi Buendia, a very good playmaker that'll get relegated, but could stay at one of the top clubs in the Premier League. In fact, comparing the two, you can see Buendia created 91 chances in the Championship during the 2018-19 season, registering 12 assists before racking up 7 assists in the Premier League, whilst Pereira registered 116 chances and got 12 assists last season in the Championship. Almost an identical return to Buendia, so I expect a similar level of output from Pereira. Next up, I predict Fulham. Like West Brom, I think the Premier League is a step too far for Fulham and Scott Parker. And like with Norwich and Huddersfield, I think they got promoted way too early. And I think Fulham would have probably benefited an extra season in the Championship to refine their style and add some extra quality. They love to dominate possession and set the record for the most possession and completed passes in a single Championship game last season. But it really gives me Louis van Gaal vibes, i.e. if you don't have the ball, you can't score, but without the quality. And I can see them getting caught in possession when playing out from the back, a lot like Norwich. But if there's one man that can save them, it's Mitrovic. The Serbian scored 41% of Fulham's goals in the Championship last season. And if he can transfer that form into the Premier League, Fulham may have a chance of survival. But I think their ponderous play will cause them too many problems, especially in their build-up. Norwich City last season got smashed in the Premier League, and they had a real problem building up from deep. Teams would allow their centre-backs time on the ball before trapping them in defensive midfield, and I see Fulham having the same problem if Scott Parker doesn't adapt. Joining them in the Championship for the 21-22 season, Jesus, we're all getting old here, will be one of Newcastle at Aston Villa. I think Newcastle got a lot of luck last season, according to every metric, including XG, XG against, expected points. They should have finished bottom of the league, not 13th. And despite good signings on paper like Jamal Lewis, Callum Wilson and Ryan Fraser, they all got relegated last season, with the Bournemouth lads providing their worst goal returns in the 19-20 Premier League campaign. If Newcastle can get Wilson and Fraser firing though, they'll be fine. The pair combined for 12 goals in the 2018-19 campaign, the most fruitful partnership in the 38-game Premier League season history. But last season, the pair just combined once. If Newcastle had signed the pair last season, it would have been seen as a coup. However, last season, how poor they were seems like a big gamble for a club that needs to improve its expected goals. Whilst Aston Villa narrowly avoided relegation thanks to some lacklustre opposition, Dean Smith's men faced the most shots in the Premier League. And their sole signing is Matty Cash and won't fix that problem. Despite the return of John McGinn and the likely retention of Jack Grealish, I still expect Villa to really struggle to see games out, much like last season where they dropped the second most points from winning positions. And those stats, along with the inactive defending that we've seen from Aston Villa, will send them back to the Championship and Newcastle surviving for at least one more season. Newcastle fans will have to pray for the 18-19 Wilson-Fraser combination to complement Saint-Maximin, or they'll be taking Villa's place in the Championship next season. In 16th and 15th, I've got Brighton and Crystal Palace. Last season, Brighton, one of my favourite teams to watch. The back back threes, the narrow 4-4-2s, the diamonds, all great fun. And I'm going to go for a bold suggestion and say that Tariq Lamptey at the end of the season is going to be regarded as one of the most promising youngsters in the league come May. The former Chelsea right-back completely revolutionised Brighton's right-hand side and put in a number of man-of-the-match performances after the restart, with his assist against Liverpool a particular highlight. He is one of my ones to watch this season, although I do think the lack of pragmatism could drag Brighton into a relegation battle without a proper goal scorer. Whilst I think Neil Maupay and Aaron Connolly are good young forwards, Brighton really lack a cutting edge, and it showed last season when they converted just 22.6% of their big chances, the lowest rate in the competition. But another season in the Premier League could spark one of the pair and fire them up the table. Crystal Palace, on the other hand, are just going through the motions. Roy Hodgson's steady Eddie boring football will keep them in the top flight, but not much else. I worry for the Eagles if they ever move on the former England boss. The signing from Easy from QPR is a great addition. He grabbed 14 goals and 8 assists from the left wing and could revitalise Wilfred Zaha. But Palace need a lot more surgery if they're to move further up the table, and they'll risk relegation if they sack Hodgson. Which brings us on to the sack race, the first boss to get the boot. I think there's some really interesting candidates. If it weren't for his 5-year, £10 million a season contract, I think Brendan Rodgers could face the boot early, considering their drastic drop-off in form and perhaps the expectation that Leicester City should be consistently challenging from the top 4. Whilst David Moyes could face early pressure with a start that sees West Ham face 6 of the last season's top 8 in the opening 7 games. But I think the man that wins the sack race is Slavan Bilic. As the only manager that's been promoted to the Premier League, not in new contract talks with his deal expiring at the end of the season, West Brom are giving off a little bit of an impression that they won't hesitate to sack Bilic, given the first sight of relegation and considering the lack of quality in their overall squad that we mentioned before. I think those relegation signs will come early, leaving Bilic the first manager to lose his job, which means we could see the great Tony Pulis back in the Baggies dugout again. Please, let me just have that one more time. I want to see those throw-ins back into the Premier League. But anyway, guys, let's move on to 14th to 11th in the Premier League. Positions that are filled with sides that usually go on a good run at a certain point of the season, be it at the start of the season, mid-season, or at the end of the campaign. So for me, I think it'll be a bunch of teams. West Ham, Sheffield United, Leeds United, and Burnley. West Ham will be very difficult to play against. They showed after the restart exactly what they're capable of, when Mikel Antonio was firing them to safety. After the restart, Antonio was directly involved in a goal a game, with only Raheem Sterling scoring more goals in the Premier League in that period. But the pragmatic approach of Moyes, combined with a very solid centre of the park, will make trips to the London Stadium very difficult. Moyes has found a great balance in midfield, the control and ball-winning ability of Declan Rice, the goal-scoring threat of Thomas Souček, and of course the creativity, yes, creativity, of Mark Noble. Only De Bruyne and Willian created more chances than the West Ham captain after the restart. Crazy stats right there. Now on to Sheffield United. Sorry Blades, it's time for some doom and gloom, but it could be good news actually, because I said you get relegated last season and you didn't. So expect a good season, Blades. Get into the comments below and you can thank me, but I feel they may suffer with second season syndrome. Their form post-lockdown was patchy at best, and I expect that could run on into this new season. Add that to the lack of outfield investment, and goals will be a problem for the Blades this year. And to make matters worse, they've lost Dean Henderson in goal and replaced him with Aaron Ramsdale, a huge downgrade in my opinion. They've gone from a goalkeeper with a 3rd best save percentage to the 15th best, and the Blades conceding 0.94 goals per game with Henderson and 3 goals per game without him. At just 22 years old, Ramsdale has time to improve, but until he does, he could cost the Blades valuable points in clutch moments. Sheffield United won 9 games by a single goal last season, and many were won by their ability to keep their opponents out. Henderson to Ramsdale is a serious downgrade, and in those big moments, Henderson was there. He was equipped with one of those wonder saves to bail them out. I don't think that Ramsdale is quite the same calibre of goalkeeper. So let's move on. Whilst I don't think Leeds United will shock the Premier League as much as Wolves or Sheffield United did, it's going to be very fun. Bielsa's 4-3-3 and his 3-4-3 diamond will ask big tactical questions of their opponents. But I do think that their super aggressive high press could leave them vulnerable to the counter-attack, whilst Nuno and Wilder's counter-attacking 3-5-2 lended itself to overachieving. However, they've recruited smartly. Robin Knock at the back and Rodrigo Moreno up front could be good additions to the squad. Of the two, I think the Spaniard may have the bigger impact. Patrick Bamford is a wonderful footballer. He works supremely hard. He's great in the press. He carries the attack well, but he lacks a real cutting edge of a top-level striker. Despite scoring 16 goals last season, he did so after taking 143 shots. Rodrigo improves on the Englishman in every aspect. Despite a couple of poor seasons at turbulent Valencia, I think he'll prove to be a success under Bielsa. Leeds will massively catch teams out with their intensity and fascinating style of football. If you want to get an idea of how Leeds will play, we did a tactics video last season, which will be linked above, so go and check that out. But in short, their progressive underlaps combined with an element of pragmatism will catch teams out early doors. They could even finish in the top half if they can carry that strong start deep into the season. And one thing you guys have got to watch out for this season is Luke Ayling's movement from fullback. It's a lot of fun, but teams may find a way to catch Leeds out, and I think they'll finish 12th in the Premier League, not quite in the top half. And finally, Burnley. Despite no new faces, the Clarets haven't lost any key men either, so will continue to be abrasive and effective, shithousing their way to a solid mid-table finish. A successful season for them will be keeping hold of Sean Dyche and making a huge profit on potentially likes of Tarkowski or McNeil at the end of the season. Dyche's ability to identify and recruit good talent that he can get the best out is what's made Burnley such a consistent side, summed up by forwards Chris Wood and Jay Rodriguez, who enjoyed their best and second best Premier League goal-scoring seasons under Dyche last season respectively. Now, it's time for the top half of the league. In 10th, I've got another major drop-off, this time Leicester City. The psychological effect of bottling third place despite having a 12-point lead will weigh heavily on the squad, and it'll be up to the manager to shake that up. Unfortunately though, I think this poor form will continue. They needed new recruits, but don't have any, despite having £23 million left over after selling Chilwell and buying Castagna. And although key players like Ndidi and Maddison are returning from injury, they've not had much of a pre-season to regain match sharpness. I think they'll struggle with form and fitness. Combined all of that, to that added slog of the Europa League, Leicester City could go from top 4 hopefuls to mid-table mediocrity. Above them in the league will be Southampton, Everton and Wolves. Unlike Leicester City, Southampton's excellent end to the season will carry forward. Since the restart, only Manchester United lost fewer games than Southampton, and they finished the season strongly, even with Che Adams getting back to his Birmingham best. But the change in form is all down to Ralph Hasenhüttl, who changed the system from a back three to a 4-4-2 after the 9-0 loss to Leicester City. Until that point, Southampton were 19th in the table, having picked up just 8 points from 12 games. But after the change, they picked up 44 points from 26 games, a 5th most in the league over that period, which suggests they could even go higher than 9th position. What casts doubt, however, is the form of Danny Ings and whether he can maintain it. If he can, I think Southampton could finish as high as 7th, maybe even knocking on the door of the top 4. But if he can't, they may finish as low as 14th. So it's all on Danny Ings to score a decent amount of goals for Ralph Hasenhüttl's Southampton. Moving on to 8th and Carlo Ancelotti's Everton. They've had a really good window with additions of Allen, Decore and James Rodriguez, giving Everton finally a bit of spark in the centre of the park. Too long we've watched Gylfi Sigurdsson bore the hell out of the Goodison faithful. Allen and Decore of course will add the control, but James is the stardust and very much still has it. Rodriguez has become more mercurial as the years have passed, with him very much in the mould of an Ongonch, an Argentinian number 10. If Everton can get the best out of the Colombian, which Ancelotti has shown he can, where James was directly involved in a goal every 88 minutes in his last season under Ancelotti, then Everton could challenge for a European place, using Allen and Decore to provide the energy and do his defensive work, allowing him to sit at number 10 and create for Calvert-Lewin, Musa Keane or Richarlison. However, there are question marks defensively, notably at right back and centre back, that could let teams catch them out on the break. So 8th is. And finally, a hat-trick of 7th place finishes for Wolves, with Adama Traore's pace, Diogo Jota's goal scoring, Daniel Ponce's ability to create something out of nothing, and Raul Jimenez's all-round play. Nuno has a stacked attack. And that's before the addition of FM legend Fabio Silva. The 18-year-old has extraordinary off-the-ball movement, a lot like a young Filippo Inzaghi born offside. In Porto's UEFA Youth League success, Fabio Silva, then 16, scored 5 goals and registered 4 assists in just 9 appearances, being directly involved in a goal every 86 minutes. The kid is special, and under Nuno is positioned to make the most out of his potential, which will make him a coup at £36 million. The lack of European football will also allow Wolves to fully prepare for games, maximising their chances of winning them. The question marks though come at wing-back. With the loss of Doherty and injury to Otto, Wolves will have new starting wing-backs which could cause some problems. But with the likes of new signing Marcel from Lyon and Adama Traore, they could be fine. But before we move on to the top 6, let's talk about the Golden Boot. As you can imagine, it's going to be the usual suspects. Sterling will get around 20 goals, so will the likes of Mane, Vardy, Martial and Rashford. But pulling ahead, I do think it will be Aubameyang, Salah and Kane. Salah because of his consistency, Mane because of his red-hot form, and of course Harry Kane as Mourinho's number 9. But let's dive into it a little bit more. First up, Harry Kane. The Spurs number 10 has had a consistent start under Mourinho, scoring 12 goals in 18 Premier League games. But the issue comes with Mourinho's style of football. Chances will be few and far between compared to life under Pochettino. Since Mourinho took charge, Spurs ranked 10th in the Premier League for chances created, behind the likes of Brighton and Aston Villa. Kane will have to be at his clinical best if he wants to win his 3rd Golden Boot. Next up, Salah. We've got to talk about the Egyptian man when mentioning the Golden Boot, with the Liverpool man winning the boot 2 out of the last 3 seasons. However, the issue with Salah's quest for the Golden Boot is Sadio Mane, who he shares the main goal-scoring role at Liverpool with. This isn't a problem for Klopp, having 2 elite goal scorers, but it means that Liverpool, when they look to finish off moves, have 2 players, as opposed to Arsenal, who've got 1. Since Arteta took charge at Arsenal, Aubameyang is the top scorer among the 3. And if we also take the numbers since the Gabonese striker moved to the Premier League, he's ranked number 1 for big chances and of course goals scored in a number of very inconsistent Arsenal sides. As Arsenal become more consistent under Arteta, these numbers will only improve. And that is why Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang will be the 2021 top scorer in the Premier League. So now it's time for the top 6. I see this as 3 battles. Number 1 for 5th and 6th, number 2 for 3rd and 4th, and number 3, who's going to win the Premier League and who's going to finish 2nd. Starting with 5th and 6th, I think Arsenal will finish behind Spurs again. Arsenal's downfall will be down to their consistency, but this isn't a problem if you look at the big picture. Mikel Arteta's project is a lot more long-term than Mourinho's at Spurs, which is likely to end in an explosion in about 18 months' time, if you check your watches. Mourinho's squad is currently better than Arsenal's at the moment, but if we're looking at pure potential, something that Arsenal fans need to take in is it's a lot better than Spurs. Saliba, Gabriel, Saka, Martinelli all have potential to be the best in the league in their position. And it's very much a work in progress for Arsenal. Which system best suits the squad? How long will it take Arsenal to get to Arteta's philosophy on the pitch? Patience and of course time is what Arteta needs right now, and he's definitely going to be a success at the Emirates. Expect an FA Cup trophy. Moving on to Spurs, question marks come defensively, but Spurs finished last season well in this regard, and the addition of Matt Doherty will remove the Serge Aurier problem, whilst adding real quality in the final third. This will give Spurs a lot more balance, with a back 3 created by Ben Davies tucking in, not to mention the screen provided by Højbjerg in midfield, who topped the charts for most possession won last season. What will hold Spurs back though, ironically, is a hunt for trophies, which Mourinho will look to bring to White Hart Lane. He'll prioritise a challenge for the Carabao Cup and the Europa League over the Premier League, which will mean their form will be inconsistent at the back end of the season. On to 3rd and 4th, I think it's going to be Manchester United and Chelsea. I think if the window shut today, Chelsea would get the edge. But it doesn't finish until the 5th of October, giving United time to get those deals in for Sancho and Reguilón. done. Do the business. And if United add those guys, they'll become a completely different beast. A team well-versed. Of course, alongside the signing of Donny van de Beek, United have real quality. If Pogba, Donny and Bruno can fit in the same midfield, United are going to score a hell of a lot of goals. But I think in terms of Chelsea, it's going to be about consistency, and that may hold the Blues back. Their firepower in attack is sensational. They'll literally blow teams away with their attack, but the defence is still a problem on paper. You're looking at Salah and Thiago Silva. They could be excellent signings, but there's no guarantee that a 35-year-old Silva will be able to hack it in the Premier League. And Salah's minutes last season was spread across left back and centre back, not quite ideal. On top of that, Chelsea haven't replaced Kepa yet and could cost them in the big moments, meaning that I think they'll finish in 4th position. And finally, the big one, the winners and the first losers. Unfortunately, I think it's going to be back-to-back wins for Liverpool. As things stand, I don't think City have strengthened enough to topple Liverpool. They need at least a centre back, maybe Koulibaly, and a left back, and maybe a central midfielder to step in and replace David Silva's creativity. The Spaniards still racked up 10 assists last season in the Premier League, despite playing second fiddle to Kevin De Bruyne. And whilst there are players at the club that could step in, like Gundogan or Bernardo Silva or Phil Foden, I think it could take a year for them to adapt. Whereas Liverpool haven't really lost anyone of note, which is what usually causes Klopp's title winners to stumble. He managed to bring back-to-back Bundesligas to Dortmund, followed by a second-place finish in both the Bundesliga and the Champions League, despite losing 3 of his best players in Sahin, Kagawa and Götze. And even if Wijnaldum was to leave for Barcelona, he's largely replaceable, and I expect Naby Keita and Minamino to step up this season. I'm also expecting a slight tweak in system potentially, with Liverpool evolving and making them a little bit more unpredictable, giving that if they're looking to sign Thiago, they might be playing him as a regista. So the system could be tweaked to accommodate him, a tweak that also would help Minamino and Keita to get into the first 11. And I really think this lack of investment from City, combined with Liverpool's lack of loss, will hand the second Premier League title to Jurgen Klopp. But anyway guys, what do you think? Let me know your predictions in the comments below. I've been Statman D. Subscribe if you're new. The Premier League is back. Let's go! Thanks for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, why not check out some more content on the Statman Dave YouTube channel.